Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the September 11th, 2025 meeting of the full school committee. Before we get started, a couple of things. I want to acknowledge that today is September 11th, 24th anniversary. Just observe a 10-second silence. Thank you. We start the school year with 3 new leaders, Bella Wong as interim superintendent, Robin Benoit as deputy superintendent for OTL, and Karen Schmuckler, in all her goodness, agreed to stay on for the full year with us in OSS. So welcome and continued welcome to Karen. We did have some meetings over the summer, but this is our first meeting of this school year as we enter the second week. I want to set our tone as one of politeness, kindness, grace. We had some difficult conversations and dialogue throughout the last school year, and I really want to make sure that we set a tone for our students and for our community of giving each other grace and space to share opinions and have conversation and dialogue. First item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. It has 3 items on it. I just want to call out before entertaining a motion, the Elijah Lincoln Goodman Memorial Scholarship, and thank the family and friends of Mr. Goodman for their generosity and their support of the community. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. I am going to have a hard time going around the room, but I'm going to do it as best I can. Bob, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay. Carolyn?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes, Sarah's next to me.
Sarah?
It's okay. Yes.
She was in the center. I was going back to her. Mariah?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Did I miss anyone?
Nope, you got everyone.
Excellent. Moving on to the next administrative business, possible vote to authorize the BHS Innovation Fund to serve alcohol during their annual Galarama fundraising event on November 6, 2025 at Brookline High, 115 Greeno Street from 7 to 10 p.m. Students will be present. As folks know, or I think folks know, this is one of those things that we're required to vote. But it's sort of standard practice and nothing out of the ordinary. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Bob moves it. Is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, second.
Jesse seconds. Any discussion? Excellent. Bob, how do you vote?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Next on the agenda, we're moving right through, is our superintendent's report. This is an introduction and welcome and the update on school opening that I think we're all eager to hear.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight, and I also thank the school committee for their support in my transition to this day. So the agenda does say introduction and welcome to the new district staff, but we're going to do that as part of this presentation, update on school opening by the members of the senior leadership team. So we are going to go in order with Karen Schmuckler, then Robin Benoit, then Susan Gibbons, and then myself. And so the introduction and welcome to new district staff will be part of Susan's presentation. So I think we have slides that we're going to call up. So Karen Schmuckler, Deputy Superintendent of OSS, is going to start us off. So we thought we would each take our sections to do that.
Well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here. Back. We've had a very busy summer with a lot of exciting things. So I'm going to get right to it in terms of OSS. We have enhanced and rejuvenated our literacy work in the district. A week ago, we trained 30 educators in Wilson, which is an evidence-based instructional programming for students with dyslexia. As you heard last year when we presented on the literacy work, it mirrors very nicely with where we are in terms of our literacy rollout, which is using foundations, which is also part of the Wilson reading system. So we are very excited to be able to do that. This is an initial start of what will be a 2-year program of making sure that we're training multiple groups of educators and then supporting them with coaching and ultimately certification in Wilson. We also are doing the same with OG, which is Orton Gillingham. We have a number of educators who are already trained, who are hoping to be certified. We're going to be doing a coaching model this year, and then we're going to be offering the certification for Brookline educators in the summer and into the following year. So we're very excited about that. We had a strategy meeting over the summer, moving on to our work in MTSS, which is collaborative work with the Office of Teaching and Learning. Robin and I met with our partners in New Teacher Center, really to update on sort of where we ended at the end of June with New Teacher Center. For those of you who have been here, this would be the 3rd year of the work with New Teacher Center, which has been grant funded. And we're very excited we were actually able, because there's so many new people, to actually add some additional time with New Teacher Center to support both new leaders and also some of our principals with some coaching in terms of the rollout of the literacy initiative. So that's very exciting. Through the support of the BEF, we've also able to bring in some professional development around universal design, which very much mirrors and aligns well with the work on MTSS. And so this is work that will be offered to educators and to leaders. They do a train the trainer model, which is really always helpful for sustainability. So we're very excited and appreciative of the support from the BEF in terms of that. We always do our QBS safety care training over the summer and into the school year. This is our prevention and intervention and de-escalation training that many of our educators and paraprofessionals undergo. And then we also launched the Paraprofessional Handbook. This is really the work of the special ed directors. This work was led by Nadine Mull. It's work that has happened over a number of years. There have been multiple people involved. All the special ed directors were involved in this. But we were very excited to actually have the Paraprofessional Handbook finished and being able to get it into the hands of our paraprofessionals. And so that was work that many, many people did over the summer. Just to mention the Wilson work, so all of this is really the OSS Student Services leadership team is a very strong and committed team, and all the work that we did is really credit to that team. So Anna Bauer-Matig, who is one of the pre-K through 8 special education directors, facilitated and really did the hard sort of lift work in terms of Wilson. Becky McCabe is our lead in terms of our QBS safety care training, as well as Robin Fabiano at the high school. Matt Dubois has been integral, as has Anna, in all the work with MTSS in partnership with OTL. So just kudos to all of them.
I was wondering if we can ask questions.
Sure.
Val, do you want us to move along pretty quickly?
Well, I'd like to let Karen get through
Yep.
her section first, and then
Go ahead.
I think if there are 3 people doing presentations, we can let each person get through a presentation. And I should have noted, apologies at the outset, My apologies for not being in the room. I'm traveling for work. Also remote are Donna Perry and Mariah Nobrega.
Great, thank you. And what you can see on the side is actually the Brookline multi-tiered systems of support. That is the product. It was one of the deliverables of the work with the new teacher center. It's sort of a comprehensive map. It's a working document and a draft, and it will evolve over this year. But those are both the two documents that reflect the work of both the MTSS work and the paraprofessional handbook. We are also continuing our work around equity and anti-bias. Many of us are going to attend the Attorney General's work on combating hate in Massachusetts schools, which is next week. That also incorporates the commission that has met over the past couple of months around combating anti-Semitism, which is going to be part of the work around combating hate in Massachusetts. And as we look forward this year in terms of the work that we need to do across our schools in terms of equity and anti-bias. Very, very exciting is the launch of Unified Sports. This is also credit goes to Robin Fabiano. Basketball season starts next week. The first game is against Newton South, I believe, next Thursday, 4 o'clock. We have 40 participants in Unified Sports. As you can see, that's the fall sport. Bocce is a new sport for winter, and then track in the spring. So we're very excited for that and for the support that goes into that. In terms of grants and contracts, many of you heard this last night. The IDA grant has been approved, which is very exciting as it really funds and supports so much of the innovative work that we're trying to do this year. And we have 96% of our vendor contracts are executed. So we really are feeling well positioned to move forward this school year in terms of all the work. We did a lot of work over the summer in terms of substance abuse prevention, very detailed, so I'm going to give you a little more information in these slides because there's really a lot happening this year. So Matt Dubois and myself met with our partners at DPH and the Brookline Parent Education Network, and then Matt continued to meet with both our partners and our district educators in terms of all the work that we do, both at the curriculum and instructional level, in terms of substance abuse prevention and intervention. And Matt is on the steering committee of the Brookline Coalition for Wellness and Prevention, which is Be Well. So in partnership with Be Well, they're launching, and we're launching, an anti-vaping campaign, which is going to be launched in the fall of 2025. That involves our Brookline High School peer leaders who are going to be launching the campaign at both the high school, and then they also partner with our middle school guidance counselors to do work both at the 5th and 6th grade level. We're also training, some of our guidance counselors actually used IDACIDE last year. IDACIDE, as you can see there, this is really a tier 2 intervention. It's drug education, curriculum intervention, diversion, and empowerment. This is really around when students have had issues around substance abuse. It is to provide diversion and education in lieu of discipline wherever possible. And so we're systematizing that across the district in terms of being able to train all our counselors and our clinicians to be able to provide the education and training to students. IDACIDE is a curriculum that comes out of the work out of Mass General Brigham, which is where that curriculum comes from. They also did a review of our health programming in both 7th and 9th grade and have included additional lessons from the Stanford Reach Lab on vaping and marijuana use. Also, in partnership with the Massachusetts Partnership for Youth, there'll be 2 parent workshops, one on October the 15th, one on April the 8th. The one on October the 15th is around marijuana. The one on April the 8th is around, focuses on vaping. You'll soon be sharing, or Matt will be sharing the results of the health survey data with you. They have been crunching numbers all summer on that, and there's some very positive data coming out of that youth health survey data, which will be shared to you. As part of the presentation of that data, DPH and the district will also be convening a parent panel to really have people be able to kind of look at that and interrogate those results. And then DPH, along with the community partnerships, will be doing a community wellness summit in winter of 2026. So that is the sort of full scope of some of the substance abuse prevention and intervention work happening both in the district, but also in strong partnership with our community leaders. And that is it. So I can take questions.
That's a lot. Thank you, Karen. Questions, comments?
So I'd like to break in if that's okay. I was trying to understand the model that the Wilson and OG was for. Is that, could you tell me grade levels, and can you tell me if it's only going to benefit students with IEPs, and if it's to work one-on-one or in small groups, or is it in the classroom?
So Foundations, which is part of our ELA curriculum rollout, is in the classroom. And so that is sort of at your tier 2 and tier 3 level. The Wilson training is primarily this year for special educators. So that will be implemented in special education, individually or in small group.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can you see as well?
No, can you call on
Jesse
Sarah?
and Donna, have their hands up. So Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Schmuckler, so the 96% of contracts that have been executed with vendors, is that the direct support to students vendors that you were referring to?
Correct. It's a combination, direct support to students, it's all our professional development vendors, it's all our tools, all of the sort of technology, so everything that we do in OSS.
Thank you.
And Donna.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much, Dr. Schmuckler. First of all, I want to say congratulations. You did an incredible amount of work over the summer.
The team.
The team did, and we're so appreciative. I wanted to ask where we can find information about Thursday's game, if we're interested in attending. And also congratulate you on the paraprofessional and the team on the paraprofessional handbook. I think that's an incredible accomplishment. Do you have a sense of how many paraprofessional openings we have across the district at the moment?
I don't exactly, but I believe
Okay.
Susan does, and
Okay.
she will be sharing it. But we've had also a really a lot of good hiring, which we're excited about. There are still some openings, but not many.
Okay. And where can we find information about the game on Thursday if we
I
want to
will
join?
email it to you. I will
Thank
email it
you.
to you.
Thank you, Karen. It was amazing.
There's a question from Bob.
Sorry, Bob. go
Yeah,
ahead.
quickly. You mentioned that we were funded under IDEA.
Yes.
Is that a surprise, considering what's been going on in terms of defunding?
It wasn't. There wasn't really any threat to I mean, I think we were all worried, but sort of, over the summer, there were concerns about the title grants. There was not ever a concern around the IDEA grant coming from the federal government. And so hopefully it stays that way.
And so there was never a concern about the Title I and the IDEA grant. It was the other smaller ones, but they're not insignificant for us, so we were relieved that they were released. I think the vendor contracts you referred to are the ones supported by the grant.
I mean, they're all of them. So some of them
Yeah,
supported by
so
the grant.
it's just
and-
highlighting how much that helps us.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Some are supported by the grant, but some are also general fund.
No more hands.
Thank you. Superintendent Wong, who's next? Is it Robin?
We
Okay.
have interim deputy superintendent of teaching and learning, Robin Benoit, and so she's coming up next.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. So we did a lot of work in a very short amount of time over the summer because things were rolling along even before I arrived and then as I entered and continued through the summer. So I thought I would lay it out in just in terms of some of the work that I've been doing and doing with schools and some of the things that were happening behind the scenes. So certainly, I think July 18th was my start date, and immediately I was able to do entry interviews, and begin establishing relationships with our coordinators and our building leaders. And so that's our K-8 coordinators, our 9-12 coordinators, and our K-12 coordinators. And many of them came in right away to spend time with me, to tell me what was front of their mind for their departments and what was happening in their schools and in the realm of teaching and learning. So that was a lot of orienting for me and a lot of information all at once. And then, of course, starting to build relationships with the senior leadership team and the OTL staff that remained. And one of the other pieces of that was immediately hiring an interim senior director of teaching and learning in Dr. Joelle Peterson. And so we will introduce that later when you do the new staff.
Ooh, Joelle Peterson, she'll be with us next Thursday, presenting on the literacy implementation. So you'll see her then as well.
And she too, hit the ground running, starting to establish those relationships and getting a sense of the work that's been happening and the work that will need to be happening throughout the year. So that was really important. The other piece of kind of orienting myself and starting to orient the department was thinking about understanding the systems that were in play and what we needed to do to keep them moving along. So thinking about that interdepartmental work across, some of the collaborations we've been doing, and the interdepartmental work across content areas and schools that they're doing together. So just how do all the systems work together? Some of our other systems, such as homeschool and course approval, and how do we keep those things moving along for teachers? Because there was a little gap at the beginning of the summer. And then beginning to understand the scheduling and the way each of the systems work, schools work as a system, and a system of schools together. Another area of kind of learning and work that was happening over the summer was certainly the work that was happening behind the scenes for the implementation of Fish Tank in K-5. And Kristen Gray, our ELA coordinator for K-8, was doing a tremendous amount of work to make that happen and get that ready for teachers. There was also some professional learning that was happening for teachers in grades 6 through 8 as they got ready to pilot. And we were doing some work with the PRISM 3 grant that helps support some of those materials and some of the professional learning that went alongside it. We also, as Karen mentioned, continued to work on our partnership with MTSS and to think about how that work moves forward in the coming year and kind of orient there. And then also beginning to understand the professional learning needs for the system throughout the year, knowing that, that there was a loss there in the budget, a tough loss in some choices that had to be made, and how could we support some of that professional learning through grants that we were able to secure. And so some of that was voted yesterday with the title grants, so that we were really thankful for that as we begin the school year. Another big event that happened was welcoming our new educators to the district. So that's a lot of work that happened for our mentors, both our mentors that work with our first-year teachers to the district and those that are in their second and third year. So a whole system of folks behind the scenes welcoming them and supporting their professional growth in Brookline, and our new teacher orientation, which is really a 3-day orientation for new teachers to the district. One that our HR department really orchestrates and helps orient them to those aspects of the system. One that was done in partnership with OTL and OSS as we kind of brought them on board with some of the big work that needs to be done, and let them know who some of the folks are that they can lean on, and then also what are some of the programs that are offered within our system. And then finally, the other piece of work that's been happening is really preparing for the year ahead. So the preparation for the ESSA grants, the title grants, was a lift that we had to kind of. It was a lift because again, you're working from a lot of planning was done in the spring right? And then having to execute the preparation of the grant later in the summer and not necessarily having all the same staff, but working from a lot of the work that had happened prior to. Working to get our evaluation system up and running and getting educators in the right place in our system, aligning evaluators with them, so working with principals and coordinators to make that happen, and just beginning our collaboration as an Office of Teaching and Learning and thinking about how we're setting the stage for the work we'll do together with the coordinators, Joelle and myself, throughout the year, and that the work that they'll do with each other, K-8, K-12, and 9-12 as a whole unit, preparing for the DESE review and working closely with the high school as they start to think about their vision of a graduate and what that process is going to look like. So a lot of good things to come. That's really the bulk. It's really been a number of weeks of kind of listening and learning and kind of orienting and wayfinding is kind of how I would think about it over the last few weeks.
Thank you so much. Have you been here a full 6 weeks yet? This is
Maybe.
this is
Just
a lot.
barely,
This is a lot
barely,
for
just
barely.
I think.
Thank you. Questions? Sarah's going to coordinate in the room. I can't see when the slides are up.
Carolyn.
Thank you, and thank you, Robin, and welcome. It's great to hear from you and meet you in person.
I know.
And this is fantastic, and it must be a very heavy lift. I'm just curious, going back, on here. Just with Fish Tank, when it says pilot 6 to 8 through 8, I'm just wondering, like, what does pilot mean operationally?
So a little bit different from the K-5 where they piloted units in the spring. So some teachers have, there are teachers across the district that worked with units that have had a little bit more experience.
Okay.
And we're going for a full implementation.
Okay.
6 through 8, teachers were just learning about the materials over the summer. They're just now beginning to use some of the units. They may not be using all of the units.
Okay.
So it's not a full every teacher, every
Okay.
unit.
Okay.
For the year. So as we go through this
Okay.
year, they'll be, they're just a step behind in terms of that learning curve.
And then is there a system of kind of getting feedback from those teachers?
Yes. just
Yeah.
Much like with the K-5, and even as we go through this first year of implementation, we will be continuing to gather feedback from teachers as they, actually implement units and what's working, what do they need more of, are there places we need to tweak and adjust as we've gone through units for the first time, and some of that same feedback will come from 6 through 8 teachers as well.
And are there teachers at each K through 8
Yes.
piloting? Thank you. And then, thanks. And then I just have one other question on the vision of a graduate, which I think had sort of come up even before the ballot question having to do with the MCAS. So are those related? And I was going to ask this perhaps in new business anyway, and it might not be a question for you, but just sort of where we are in terms of, like, what does it take to graduate from Brookline High School
So they're
now?
two slightly different things. So we will
Yeah.
be working on, we will be bringing forward our competency determination piece later this fall.
Okay,
So that's another piece that we've been
Yep.
working on. But the vision of a graduate is really bigger work.
More
and it
nuanced,
actually becomes
yeah.
system-wide work, when you start to think about, like, what do we want our graduates to look like eventually as they head off into the world, but then thinking about system-wide, what does that mean along their journey? Like, how do we prepare them for that? And it's not just a high school piece. It
Yep.
often starts there because of the NEASC work, but really it's thinking about every educator
Yeah.
and every school along the way
yeah,
contributes to
Yeah.
the journey
Yeah.
of a graduate from Brookline.
So the vision of a graduate is identified in your strategic plan, and actually it was identified to be further along than where we are now, but really we are launching that work. The high school is actively seeking a consultant to support them. The strategic plan really is vision of a graduate for the high school, but we've already talked to the district leaders, and everyone agrees that really they will start because that's what was supported, but the intention is that it will be pre-K-12.
that
And
makes sense.
so when they do this work, they'll include representatives from the pre-K-8 to be part of that. But again, the intention would be to expand it. So it's a little different than what you have in your strategic plan currently.
Thanks, and that's really interesting and sounds great. And then maybe, and so then the competency determination,
That's different.
Different,
That's
yes.
really, yeah, that's more
And-
technical requirements, whereas vision of a graduate is going to be, it's going to be about content, it's going to be skills, it'll be habits, like habits of mind. And the competency determination is more technical to graduate from high school.
and will we get updates about that? Maybe this is a new business.
I'll actually
yeah,
talk a
yeah.
little bit about that
Yeah.
when we do subcommittee updates.
Okay.
Because, the school committee is required to pass a new policy
Oh,
around
okay,
that stuff
okay.
before the end
Sorry
of the
to
year.
distract. Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you.
I said your name, you didn't hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to look at Robin and say, I am so impressed with your entry, how, you've made so many connections and you have demonstrated an incredible understanding of the entire system in an incredibly short amount of time. So I want to thank you and appreciate you. Great job.
Thank you.
And I have maybe the last question. Okay, go ahead, Donna. Nope, go ahead.
I also just want to echo Bob and Caroline's gratitude. We're so happy to have you here. I wonder if you would say that the year ahead section that you have up here captures what you see as the priorities that you have in mind for the year ahead, for the school year ahead.
That's a good question. I think it's still evolving, but some of those bullet points there are certainly, some of them tied directly to the strategic plan, as Bella pointed out. So evaluation system is up there, for instance, because it is part of the strategic plan, and making sure that we have a cohesive system of evaluation that supports the growth of educators. And the DESE review is going to, it's going to loom large in terms of work that we need to do, and that visit will be coming in the spring. Certainly, there's other big work, the literacy work that's been happening, the MTSS work that continues to happen and continues to grow within the district are also priorities.
And I imagine as you sort of like move through the next few weeks and even the next few months, some of that will maybe shapeshift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll evolve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, did you want to speak?
Hi, Robin, we already met
Yeah.
just before the meeting, so welcome again. A question about Fish Tank again. So in the implementation, if you go online to Fish Tank for each of the grades, I've done it, you can go to look at each of the books, each of the lessons plans, it's all online, right?
Yes.
So how is PSB making a decision about which lessons plans to use and which books to use? And is there some way to find out more about that if parents wanted to know in advance, or if let's say, someone in the pilot 6 to 8 wanted to know from all that they offer there, how are we making the decision? Is it being done through curriculum coordinators, or is there some other process being followed?
Certainly, they can always reach out to their child's teacher. I mean, I think that's always a good place to start, to have that connection with a child's teacher. At the beginning of each unit, there is a family letter that goes home to kind of highlight, like, this is the focus of the unit. These are some of the things that will be happening. And if there are questions about that, they can certainly always reach out to either their teacher or their building administrator, and that can be a larger conversation if need be.
Thank you.
So Robin, one of the metrics that I love to hear is about teacher evaluations. I think it's just really linked to quality of teachers. And I don't want ever metrics on who got what grade. I just want metrics on completion of evaluations. Have you set a goal for yourself of how many, like what percentage you'd like to see done this year?
I think we're at all of them is what we'd like to see done. Our educators deserve those conversations of feedback that they're in, that they're part of, that those are two-way conversations, and the feedback that they get through observation and working with their evaluator throughout the year.
I'd love to hear you report back to tell us how far you got. Thank you.
So it is identified in the strategic plan that the district was not at 100% evaluation of teachers, of educators, and so that is our hope. But we've been thinking about why it hasn't happened. So we are thinking about structural barriers to teachers being able to do that. And so we're looking at caseload, we're looking at how many buildings that they might have that's part of their work, and also some of the training that we're putting in. So while we want that to happen, we're trying to figure out how to support our educator evaluators to attain that.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I was just going to say that not all teachers have to be evaluated every year. So when we say 100% of teachers evaluated, we might be saying 100% of those who are up for evaluation.
Actually, teachers are on cycle every year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or either, it's either a formative part of the
Right.
cycle or a summative part of the
Right.
cycle for
Right.
professional
Our
status teachers.
teachers who are not yet who are non-PTS in the
Right.
first few years are getting fully evaluated each of those first years, but once they get PTS, they are on a 2-year cycle. So they really, actually, that has been a tremendous increase for all people that evaluate, that educators are on evaluation cycle all the time now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Val, no more hands.
Okay, thank you, Robin, so much for all this work. Superintendent Wong, is Dr. Gibbons next?
Yes, she is.
Great.
So our deputy superintendent, Susan Gibbons, to receive all of us and coach us and show us where everything was. Anyway, so our deputy superintendent of the Office of Administration and Finance.
Well, hello. I hope you all had a nice summer, and we have been busy, 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 as you can see. And I was just sitting here taking a moment to reflect on the massive amount of work that is taking place here in this school district. It is so significant and will have enormous impacts on the education here for our students. And so I'd like to start by just saying thank you, Bella, thank you, Robin, and thank you, Karen, for all you've done over the course of the summer to keep us on target to be able to continue the work that was started in the past. So for me, I am going to cover just a couple of areas. I'm not going to get into a launch of all the things that we have to do in my office over the course of the year. Rather, I'm going to focus on some, opening of the school year topics. One, I'll introduce the new staff who are new to our district and are non-aligned. Then I'm going to talk a bit about transportation, because that's been a little bit of a hiccup this school opening, so I want to talk about that. And then I'm going to talk a bit about recruit and hiring for the current year. So, and then at a future meeting, maybe next week, we'll talk a little bit about operations and building. Charlie is going to be meeting with us this week in our subcommittee meeting, and so we'll give you more of an update on things that occurred over the summer with our facilities. So that will not be on the agenda for tonight. So you've had introductions. Bella Wong is our interim superintendent of schools. Robin Benoit, our interim deputy superintendent of teaching and learning, and Karen Schmuckler, our deputy superintendent of student services. So that rounds out the newbies on your senior leadership team. Next, in the Office of Teaching and Learning, we have Joelle Peterson, and she is the interim senior director of teaching and learning. She just started I think 2 weeks ago, right? She really just joined us. Kristen Gray is our coordinator for K-8 ELA, and she was an interim, and she has now been moved to a permanent coordinator in our school district. And Brianna Brown was also an interim last year, and she will now be the permanent high school science coordinator. In the Office of Student Services, we have Lillian O'Flaherty. She will be the director of Winthrop House, and Alexia Thompson will be the coordinator of BHS school counseling. And then in the Office of Administration and Finance, Z. Perry, my executive assistant. He's been an amazing addition to the staff. I'm so delighted to have him with us. Shayna Auborg is the administrative assistant in the operations department. So she works, with transportation and facilities. And she just joined us just a few weeks ago as well. And then we have in the area of registration and enrollment, a new specialist there. We've had several of those over the last year, but we like to welcome Gayatri Natarashan. And then last but not least, our food service coordinator is Michelle Miccarelli. So those are the new members of our non-aligned district staff. Let's see if I am having some challenges. There we go. And then for principals, we have Sada Ewan over at FRR, Saeed Ola at Baker, and Candace Whitmore at the Pierce School. So we have a full complement of principals on board with us this year. So that's exciting. Okay. And then for vice principals, we have Michelle Crow, who is at FRR this year, Mary Gallant at FRR as well. We had 2 openings there for vice principals. And then we have Christy Hernandez at the Pierce School as a vice principal. Last year, she was the assistant director of educational equity, and we welcome her to the Pierce School this year.
And Michelle Crow is at Driscoll, so just so that everyone knows that she is at FRR now.
Yep. Okay, so that's our introductions, and we're delighted to have everyone on board. I will talk a bit more about, how our recruit and hire season went, but I wanted to get into transportation next, and then I'll end with some really, of course for me, exciting news about our statistics around hiring this year. I think you'll be really happy to learn some information about how that went. Okay, so let's talk about transportation. So I'll just start with a little bit of an overview to orient us. And so transportation services are provided based on the school committee's policy. So that sets kind of eligibility for services. The services that we provide are free. No one is charged for our transportation services, so that's important. A couple of years ago, during our override, there was a decision made that we would not be charging fees for South Brookline, which was the only population that was charged fees for transportation. So since that time, we have not charged any fees. So in essence, students that are K through 12 who live outside of 1.5 miles from their school, we provide transportation for. Students on IEPs, of course, who meet eligibility requirements for transportation, of course, we provide those folks with transportation. Those are usually done through a different contractor using vans. However, we do transport some students on IEPs within our schools, from neighborhoods to our schools. So those are for our in-house special education programs. Students on free and reduced lunch are eligible, and students who qualify for McKinney-Vento or foster care are also eligible to receive transportation services for us. So for what we call regular education transportation, which is really what my focus is going to be on tonight, we have our buses are considered 65 passenger buses, okay? Sometimes they're 83, ours are all 65. That's important as you think about capacities, and we've heard a lot, of chatter around do we have capacity on our buses, and what does that mean? I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So I wanted to also call out that our bus contractors have not changed. So we're using the same bus contractors this year that we've used last year, and in fact, Eastern, I think, has been here maybe 10 years. So our regular education transportation company has been in place for a very long time. They're very familiar with Brookline and all of the roads and bus stops and schools and all of that. So they're not new. So that I wanted to make sure folks understood that. Also, the bus drivers are all returning. So they're veteran Brookline bus drivers. And I mention that because we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we've had this year. And I wanted to reassure folks that we've got people that are familiar with Brookline even though we've had some circumstances this year that were not, one, anticipated or could easily be navigated without having like real life experiences. So for bus routes, I wanted to just mention this, of course, at Fisher Hill, so that's the Pierce Middle School students being transported over to Fisher Hill. We're providing that out of the building project resources. And last year we had a little bit different model that we were providing, but in essence, we had 3 routes that were going from the library here over to Fisher Hill, and then at the end of the day in reverse. This year we added a bus. Those of you that were here last year during the budget season know that we had a small 8th grade class that moved up to the high school. So we did anticipate that we would have more students at the middle school level, so that wasn't new. As we looked at ridership and we surveyed the families that were going to be this year's 6th, 7th, and 8th, based on that information, we realized that it would be more cost effective and efficient if we added 4 routes. We had money, this is cost neutral, by the way, out of the building project, because we had money set aside for shuttles. And we're not going to need to use shuttles because we've actually added dedicated runs. The financing of this, again, is out of the building project, has no bearing at all on finances in our operating budget. And that is actually working quite well. At the high school, we've run 3 routes at the high school. So in the morning, there is an early, a middle, and a late bus in the morning. And in the afternoon, there's 2 at dismissal time, and then there's a late bus after that. Nothing there has changed in terms of the number of routes and the times that we're providing services for kids. And this is the kids from South Brookline, or students from South Brookline. At the K-8 level, that's where we had the cut this last year. So during the budget process, we went from 4 down to 2 at the elementary level. And so we have two routes. The route on bus 1 is going quite well. We've had really no significant hiccups. There's always going to be a little variation and flexibility needed at bus stops. As you're opening school and kids are like, oh, I'm a little, we had a child the other day that had to go to the bathroom, ran back into the house, so the bus waited. And this happens with little guys, right? Little guys and gals. So we try to be as accommodating as we can, but we also need to make sure that we get the kids on time. The problem bus for us has been this K-8 Route 2, so our bus number 2. I'm going to talk about what's happened there, and that one really services Lawrence, Lincoln, Hayes, and Runkle, and that has not gone as we had hoped. So the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit about how do you plan and how do you schedule buses. I could see by some of the questions coming in that perhaps people didn't quite understand how the process works. But what we look at when we're scheduling transportation is in June and July, we're getting a sense of what students are registered, like who wants transportation. Because not all that want transportation actually ride, and not all people that are eligible want transportation, right? So we do some work behind identifying who is likely to be riding our buses. So we go through a little registration process, and then in mid-August we set routes and stops based on where that ridership is looking. So we don't go door to door. We design our stops around where our riders are. Then we do a dry run. So we have the buses go out before school starts and go through the runs. They test the timing to make sure that the timing is right. We recalibrate before we publish and we send information out. But really, in the end, circumstances are going to change when you're live and school opens, because especially in Brookline, not only we have a lot of public schools, we have an awful lot of private schools and other schools, and we're all starting around the same time. So the congestion around schools and in our streets is going to increase significantly during the hours that schools start and dismissal. And you can't always simulate that. This year, of course, we learned that the MBTA was closing the D line. And we didn't, actually, it was Bella that learned that by reading an article in the paper, and she called and, everybody and said, hey, did anybody know this? So we tried to do some course correction and anticipating on what impact that would have. But again, until it happens, it's really hard to know. So we had that. We knew about School Street, then we learned about the MBTA. Some of the other closures and road work we weren't aware of. And that changes. It's not like it's the same for months or weeks, roads will be closed or construction takes place as folks are trying to repair during the good season. So some of that we weren't aware of. And then what we do at this point when you open school is you do ridership, you gather ridership data, right? And so our staff are going on the buses, they're timing the stops, how long does it take? They're recalibrating routes. So as they see that, there's a lot of traffic that goes this way, they try different ways of wayfaring through our towns. And so we adjust our pathways to our bus stops accordingly. So that's the work that we've been in the midst of doing. And we've made some course corrections based on the data that we have. And we implemented those actually yesterday and today with good results. So as of yesterday and today, bus 2 and the other one was the late bus in the morning for the high school. They've both run on time to school yesterday and today. We may make some more course corrections after some of the roads open up again and we get to see, but we're going to hold off until we get some additional data over the next couple of weeks. Okay, so that's this is standard fare, right? This is transportation planning and implementation and adjustment 101. Okay, so our challenges, as I said, were on bus 2 in particular. And that bus started over in Lawrence at Egmont, and it picked up a number of kids. And one of the things that we learned, and this is why we need the data, is that we have to see where the stops are backing up, right, in order to be able to know where to make adjustments. So we were having difficulty getting the bus from Lawrence to the first stop, the second stop, and it was taking us 20, 25 minutes. That's the first pickup. Okay, so everything thereafter is then going to back up, right? And then by the time we got to the last one, it was so far behind. And a lot of this had to do with road closures and the congestion at the beginning of the school year with everybody being on the streets at the same time. So as we looked at the data over the first few days, that's what we learned. So what we decided to do, at least for now, and it may not be for the whole year, but for now, those kids were on the bus way too long. It wasn't right. So we were able to negotiate and secure a shuttle to take the Lawrence kids. So we changed the bus time and we took those 9 kids off of the route and we started the route on the other side. The other thing we adjusted was, Route 9 has been a bear, and it's a bear anyways. And so what we did is we realigned where our stops were and what order we were delivering kids to schools so that we wouldn't cross Route 9 more than once. And that helped a lot. So it's a lot of these adjustments that we made that have allowed us to, at this point, be able to get all the kids to school on time, reduce the number of minutes the kids are on the buses, and we will probably be able to make further adjustments. The other thing that I want to talk about is at the high school. So one of the things that I think we were kind of taken by surprise was at the high school, the eligibility, the families that were eligible for South Brookline transportation. And so what happened there is that the data file that we use in order to be able to survey families, we get from our data team out of Aspen. And one of the things that we learned was that the buffer zone students were not included in the data that came over. And so the survey didn't go out to anybody that was in that buffer zone, for one. Another thing that we learned as I looked over last year's and this year's is that there were actually streets that were in the correct buffer zone that didn't get emails and transportation. So we went back and we looked, and what we learned is that some of the coding about who was in what buffer zone was inconsistent. So we've worked to clean that up. The other thing that also impacted this a little bit was we have in Aspen the primary email address for families But what we learned is not all families are using that as their primary email address. So they might be looking in this email, but we sent it to the one that's on record for us as being the primary. So there was some of that. So it's like a whole convergence of different things that cause that. So I want to talk about what we've done since then. So we talked about the buses at bus 2, but on the data collection side, what we've done is we've gone through and we've cleaned up Aspen. There's still a little bit of, we get a call here and there, even recently from a parent that was actually coded to Runkle that should have been in the buffer zone. So we missed that and we corrected that. The other thing is that there was not a definition of what streets and residents were outside of 1.5 miles from the high school. There wasn't a list of that. And so I worked with the planning department to use their GIS system to be able to identify exactly what residents are 1.5 miles away from the high school. So we have a list of that, and it's on record now, so we know. And then we took the data list from Aspen and we compared the two so we would know who to send emails to. So that went quite well. I think there was only like 3 or 4 emails we got after that. Like I said, that were zoned differently or the email address was wrong. So I think at this point, the data file for those eligible families is pretty tight. But if not, if there's anyone out there and they feel like they didn't receive it or they should be within the mile and or are eligible, certainly reach out to the transportation department. We're happy to help you. So that those were the challenges and those are the actions we took in order to address those challenges. And as of yesterday and today, when we implemented the changes, the buses are now running on time within 5 minutes. And I think that will improve a little bit, more when we get these pathways open, the MBTA as well as School Street, which we did call today to make sure and confirm. The MBTA has said, a live voice, told us that yes, they're planning on running a regular schedule starting on Friday. And if you were at the building commission meeting this week, you know that they're on target to also open School Street. So as of Monday, we should have a much more normal circumstance for us to be transporting our kids. So we're grateful for that. So that's the results, and that's my report on transportation. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Susan, can I start us off? Just a question on bus 2. Does that include students who are being transported to our specialized programs at Runkle and Hayes?
No, I don't think so. I think those are all being transported by van. I know that there is at least 1 or 2 students that are on IEPs that do use our regular transportation service, but the majority of our students are transported using the smaller vans.
Okay. And then has any thought just for next year been given to sending out emails through the PTOs at the South Brookline schools for rising 9th graders, just to perhaps give just extra notice if they haven't looked at their Aspen since they registered their student for kindergarten, that this might be a time to update information?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think you mean a notice to parents to update their information, not that the registration forms would go through the PTOs.
And the other thing
No,
is,
I'm talking about a way, right, just to another
Update your
avenue.
info.
Well, right, a different avenue that parents might see if they're not checking that email that Aspen has for them, but they might be more up to date with their PTO email. So just, I guess, cross-pollinating as much as possible within the school communities.
I think that's great. The other thing we're doing now that we have the list of what residents are actually eligible outside of that 1.5 miles, we're going to set up a field in Aspen, and then we're going to tag them so that we'll be able to have a list. And when students are registered, when they're registered, then we'll be able to tag them, not by zone, but actually by eligibility there. And I think that will help too, at least give us another data point to triangulate information.
Okay, I see Mariah's hand, and then I'll go to Sarah for questions in the room.
Thanks. I just wanted to say thank you to the transportation team. I know that these kinds of operations are are incredibly stressful when it's happening in real time and you want to get kids to school and it feels like this was a lot and you are sorted it out what feels like incredibly quickly. So thanks to the team for that.
Andy?
Yes, so as we get more information about eligible BHS families, are we confident that we actually have enough buses, or is it possible we'd have to add more routes?
Let me talk about that. Thank you.
Great.
Nice segue. Okay, so in ridership, so that was another question that had come up. What is the capacity of on our buses? And I've said over and over again, we have capacity. We have capacity. So what does that look like? So when I talked a little bit earlier, I mentioned registrations. When we do our initial planning, we do it on registrations primarily because we don't have better data at that time. But then we look at ridership, right? So this chart here provides you with the difference between registrations, who says that they would like transportation, and how many students we actually transport. So again, if you look at bus 1, we had 80 families indicate that they had students that they wanted us to transport. Of the 80 in the morning, we're transporting 33. In the afternoon, we're transporting an average of 39. And this is data, this is the average, right? This is the average that we took for the last 5 days. So, and the range is not great. You know, I'm not, when I looked at it, I said I was comfortable with the averages because it wasn't like this huge range at any of the buses. So for bus 2, 65. We have 65, and this takes out information about the shuttle. So you can see the shuttle bus that we added we've separated out the data there. So we have 65 registered for bus 2. In the AM, we're transporting an average of 17, in PM, 30. So you can see with these percentages that there is capacity on the buses. So that's not, the challenge is not that. We'll talk about the high school a little bit and what goes on there. For Fisher Hill, that's really running at a good clip, right? I mean, we're not at capacity, we could add some more. The majority of the kids are using the buses there. And so 76 and 88, that's not, not too tight. There's still some capacity there. So we feel good about that. At the high school, 221 have registered, and this is through yesterday, right? So 221 registered, but only 97 are riding in the morning and 66. This is all 3 routes, like the early, the middle, and the afternoon. Okay, so there is the ability to transport the student population that's actually showing up and this is not different, right? Ridership last year was different than registration. It almost always is. So what about the wait list, right? So let's talk about that. Okay, so in the mornings, you have 3 different times that buses are picking up for South Brookline. You have an early, you have a middle, and you have a late. And we just say that not because they're like an hour apart, right? It's not like that. It's, maybe there's 20 minutes between the early and the middle, and then the late. And so one of the challenges with the South Brookline morning was that late one, right? And that was a congestion issue, not a capacity issue. So what we do is we take the kids, and we know when we start off with assignments, it's done by lottery, by the way, and you take all the families that ask for late and you give them late, and all the families that ask for early get early, and then there's a population that all want to go on the middle bus. And so it's by lottery that they're selected to go on the middle bus. And we start by saying, like in this case, we had 184 off of our surveys that we knew we had to transport. So divided by 3 routes, you'd assign them 61, 61, 61, right? Now when you do the ridership, now is when you get to see, how much capacity is there in the middle. And so we incrementally move them off the wait list and into their preference to the greatest extent possible. So one of the things we've done is this week, starting on Monday, we move a third of the students that were on the wait list off the wait list to their preferred time. We will do another round of this. As soon as we can get really good data on, once all these, the transportation pathways open up, we want to see if that has any impact. And also as clubs start, at the high school and kids go on later buses or decide that they're absolutely not going to ride on the bus or whatever, we'll have a little better sense of that. Then we'll do another round of adjustments there. So our goal would be, to the extent possible, to move as many kids, if not all of them, off the wait list and onto their preference. Last year, we weren't able to do it for all, but we were able to get a good chunk of them to their preference. And we will continue to monitor that, and we'll do our very best to get families and kiddos on their preferred bus. So that's that. I do have some information I can share by bus, so you can see, like, for example, the late bus at the high school, on average, we're transporting 4 students. It's not, so that's the late bus. So most of the kids are getting on the bus at dismissal time. We don't have a whole lot late, but that might change as clubs kick up and, kids are staying later for after-school activities and things like that. So we're not saying, oh, that's not enough to warrant a bus, but we'll continue to monitor that and see how things play out, and kind of give you an update in a few more weeks.
Carolyn?
Thanks. And thanks, Susan, for all this, and to the transportation staff, who I'm sure it's stressful with all these moving parts. And I don't think this probably isn't a good forum for sort of getting into the weeds on this. I have offered to staff I live in South Brookline and have for 15 years, and I have kids at the high school. And I've been hearing from a lot of community members. So I would love to be able to collaboratively work with staff on sort of filling in some of the nuance that I think would help community members get what they need and get students to school at reasonable times. One thing I would suggest, for example, respectfully, is that the reason that you're seeing great ridership to Fisher Hill and not great ridership to BHS is the times. The early bus is a Z block bus, so that's great for kids who have Z block. But for kids who don't have Z block, it's not really reasonable to get on the bus at 6:48 and get to school at 7:10. So I'd love to be able to chat more about the details, but I would say that those numbers reflect the usage reflects the usefulness of the bus. And just in terms of eligibility, in terms of Pierce, and I think it's great that we have bus service for Pierce, and we know I think they reported there's $2.1 million currently in the owner's contingency of the project. So with the eligibility for Pierce students, just all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, or 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who live more than 1.5 miles from Fisher Hill?
It was designed that, and with our understanding, that any students that were a Pierce student that is in 6th, 7th, and 8th would be eligible.
Okay. Which is, again, great. And it's great that there's plenty of money in the budget to keep it cost neutral for the district. I don't know that it's vehicle neutral or logistically neutral, but again, I'd be happy to try to work with you and staff on this, because it remains challenging, and that's why people aren't getting on the bus, because it doesn't make sense to get on a bus at 6:48 when school starts at 8:15 and 8:30. So, but thanks for all the work, and I'm sure it's stressful and lots of moving parts.
Susan, can you actually clarify that? Do we use the same vehicles for Fisher Hill and BHS? Do they make?
There's 2 buses that share. So each bus can do up to 2 routes. And there are 2 buses, that was true last year too. In fact, all of our routes at Fisher Hill were shared. They did one regular ed run, and then they did a Fisher Hill run. This year, we have one dedicated bus to Fisher Hill, and we have 2 buses that are, we call them shuttles, so that share with the high school.
Thank you.
Sorry, can you explain? I don't understand what that means. Do you mean that the bus, when you say share, do you mean that the bus goes to one and then it goes to the other? Is that,
So if you're doing 2 routes,
yeah,
I'll give an example. You do an early bus at the high school, an early bus run at the high school. Then you go to Fisher Hill and you do the morning one there. Then you go back and you do the late one at the high school.
got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
For
That makes
example.
sense. Okay.
And that has,
Sorry.
we had all of the buses sharing last year. And what's different is that we have one dedicated to Fisher Hill, so there's only 2 shuttling through the high school. All 3 of them did it last year.
And so in that sense, if they didn't share, actually, do you want to call on people? Sorry.
I wanted to call on you.
Thank you, Sarah. So in that sense, if they didn't share, and maybe actually, Susan, I was going to ask you this first. You said, or in your slides, which were really helpful, thank you. I thought it said that 2/3 of the students are still on the wait list for their preferred bus. Like approximately how many students is that? Do
There's
you have?
28 left.
Oh, okay. And so in that sense, if they didn't share buses, would those students get their preferred time? Or do you have any
You have
insight
to
into
add
that?
buses. This saves money by, and it's typical. Usually you have 1, 2, or 3 tier
Yeah.
routes for your buses. I mean, that's standard in the field. If you wanted to add more buses and pay for them, you could do.
But
that. Not
if we
sure.
didn't share, if those 2 buses weren't shared, would that have an impact on the?
It would just increase your cost, right? Because you would, if without doing that, you have to add more buses. If you don't share, then you're going to have a bus for each route. And then you're going to pay more money, both in the operating budget as well as in Fisher, in the
Okay.
building project, yeah.
And is that why we have the 735 bus at BHS?
That is for Z Block.
No, I think, isn't,
No.
the 735 arrival?
Oh, Arrival.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh. Yeah,
Okay, I was just curious because having a high schooler, I was like, I would love him to get to school at 7:35, but
yeah.
I don't know why he would need to. Okay, thank you.
Carolyn?
Thanks. And again, I think it would be better probably to have this as a separate conversation that I'd be happy to have. But my thinking, Donna, in response to your question, so the ridership need is such in South Brookline that really there should be 2 vehicles going at the same time simultaneously in order to pick up throughout the neighborhood and get kids to BHS at a reasonable time, like 8, which one of the buses does. It wouldn't cost us more if the Pierce project, which has $2 million in soft contingencies, had its own bus, which would be fabulous if we had 1 or even 2 buses paid for, the vehicles paid for by the Pierce project, not just the runs being shared with other parts of town. So hopefully that can be explored, which I think would benefit everybody.
Susan, is that accurate, that if they weren't, okay.
No, the other thing I want to say is that what's happening in the South Brookline buses isn't a change. Like, that's the way it's been. We didn't change anything there.
Whether it's
We didn't
been or
change it
not,
last year.
it's
I'm
not
just saying
working.
that the model has been in place for many years. That wasn't a change. I just want to be clear, that wasn't a change for this year. So if we want to change the model, that's a different conversation. But this is in fact the model that has been in place for, I'm going to say, at least 5 years. So if we want to change the model, it'll cost more money, and that is separate. We can't, it's not. So before we were transporting Fisher Hill, this is what the high school model, if we want to change it, because they were sharing buses, right? And now we've reduced, so there's fewer buses to share, that it's going to cost more money out of our operating budget. And it will cost more out of the building project, right? It'll cost more in both. So, you know, if we want to change a model, then the school committee can certainly engage in a conversation if we want to do that. We're happy to take a look and cost out what that would be. But I just want to be clear that the issues that we had this year had nothing to do with a change in model. That has been in place. So I want to separate that. And also, the model was the same before we had transportation at Pierce going over to Fisher Hill.
Andy?
So what I'm understanding is like any bus run between South Brookline and BHS has to be paid for from our operating budget. It makes no difference at all whether that physical object, that bus, is also being used at Pierce at some other time of day.
Exactly.
So I don't understand what these two things have to do with each other.
The problem is the times. So the times being offered to students are not useful times. So I'll use myself as an example, which I don't love to do. I have a child at the high school. He is offered the Z Block bus, which would make him get on a bus at 6:50 in the morning and get to BHS at 7:10. And he was offered a 4 p.m. bus home, and school ends at 3. So dozens and dozens. And then there's another bus where you could get on the bus at 7 and get to school at 7:35. So the times, the schedules aren't useful or reasonable for families and students. So there are two different buses. Like, I'm looking at the schedule right now. Bus 3 and bus 4 are presumably two different vehicles. The problem with bus 4 is the time. It drops off at BHS at 7:35 because it then goes to bring Pierce kids to Fisher Hill.
So under your suggestion, it's not like we'd be running more buses or more runs between South Brookline and BHS. It's just that the runs that we do have would be at more convenient times because we wouldn't have to be accommodating the need to use those same vehicles at Pierce.
Yes, with the caveat that that number of vehicles did get 221. I don't know the capacity of the vehicles, but yes. But so it's not just, there's a couple, as Susan explained, there's definitely there was some communication challenges in making sure that everybody was reached who might want bus service. And then the assignments they're not useful. Like, it's not really a service if it's not useful and not reasonable. So
I'm not understanding, Carolyn. You're saying that a 7:35 arrival is not a useful service? That every bus should arrive at what, at 8? I'm just not understanding, without adding vehicles to our operating budget, how that would work.
So those are two different vehicles. If you had two vehicles running in South Brookline simultaneously, picking up all of the 221 students who weren't in Z Block, which is presumably the vast majority, then you would have more ridership. It would be useful, and you wouldn't have community members and students struggling with what's being offered. Because yes, I think if I was doing this and I looked and said, I'm getting students to school at 7:35 and school starts 45 minutes later or 55 minutes later, I would say that's not ideal. Let's try and get these students to school at a reasonable time. Let's get kids on a bus at a reasonable time.
And Susan, you're saying that would require additional vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand that. Thanks.
And why would it require additional
And
vehicles?
the other thing that I'll say is that when the number of riders, right, get moved to their preferred site, it's not changing in any significant way what the ridership percentages are. So if that theory was true, then as we moved everybody onto their preferred, which happened last year and the year before, then you would think you would see a difference in ridership, and you don't. And I do have data from last year that shows that. So again, I don't know that this is the venue to look at that, but if the school committee wishes to have us reimagine our transportation, then we can certainly consider doing that.
Ella?
So Susan, last year, did everyone eventually get moved to their preferred bus?
It's my understanding all but a couple of them were moved to their
Okay.
preferred bus.
So we're in the process of that. So you've been moving people from the wait list to their preferred spot. What percentage are at their preferred spot now?
Third.
Only 1/3?
There's only
Well, 1/3 off the wait list.
off the wait list.
Yeah,
right?
not.
The majority
yeah,
are
off the
Thank
wait
you.
list.
Okay.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So we
That's
have
on the wait
28. I
list.
don't know what the percentage is.
I didn't
I
understand.
don't know
Alright.
what the percentage is.
So it eventually, I think we're anticipating everyone's going to have their preferred spot, which means no.
No,
Okay.
because you're assuming that anybody wants to get on a bus at 7 for a school that starts at 8. So, and again, I've offered numerous times and would continue to offer to work collaboratively with staff as a community member. I think I can offer some insight, and there are probably community members who'd be happy to do that too.
I think
so.
you are planning to meet with Carolyn sometime. Yeah, great. Okay.
So Susan, you understand what's being communicated here, and Carolyn, you feel like you've been able to express yourself?
Yes, and fundamentally, I would really like the opportunity as a school committee member to have access to staff and collaborate with staff and
I
communicate
think
directly.
I think that you are going to be able to meet with Susan. Yes.
Val?
I didn't have a question. Did you have additional?
Sorry, I
you had
wanted to tell you that there aren't
additional
any, there aren't
There are
any
no
hands
more
up anymore.
hands, yeah. Susan still had hiring updates, I believe. There we go.
Yep. All right, shift gear, back to staff. So this information, so just to orient a few of you, my first year, the hiring process was not getting the kind of results that you'd want to see. We had about 7.5% opening rate on my first year. So that was just shy of 100 student or 100 staff members. It also would take a month into the school year to get everybody onboarded with their equipment and all of that. So it was really a pain point. So in my first year, we redesigned the recruit and hiring process and onboarding piece. And we went, when school opened last year, we only had 50 openings. And so this first slide here shows you in '25 what the school openings were at the time that we opened school. And so what we had was 50 openings at that time. So this gets to your question, Donna?
Yes,
About
thank
how many paraprofessionals did we have open? So like I said, so last year we had a little over 3% left open when we opened school. And this year we're just a little over 1%. And for teaching positions, we only had one position that was open when we opened school. And that was due to a late resignation. So if it hadn't been for the late resignation, we would have had 100% UNA hired and in the classrooms on day one. And this is, for me, I always say what matters, right? Quality teachers and contact time between students and teachers. And getting teachers in the classroom ready to teach our kids on day one is an important responsibility. And so that's what this slide kind of shares with you is a major victory here. Last year we had 4 openings when school started with the custodians. This year 0. So you can look through the numbers and see some of our information about openings there. The second to the right, maybe it's to your left, I think it's to your right. The second slide shows our hiring season. So it's new hires for this season. And so when I say this season, usually we start recruiting, in like February, March, April, May, June, July, all the way up until the school opening. And so during this hiring season, this year we hired 133 which is significant. Last year it was 123, and you can see on this slide by bargaining unit and non-aligned how many were hired in each area. I think a significant, not a big surprise, we had a lot of turnover in non-aligned. And so last year we had 4, this year we had 9, and that includes the turnover of a lot of people in town hall. So I just wanted to share that because, you know, some of the things that we're doing have turned out to work quite well. And, you know, for me, it's a happy day when we can have teachers there on day one in front of our kids. So, and also, you know, when I look, you know, you're always going to see Unit C, which is where you're this is always a high number. Like, I don't see anything. The thing that's remarkable about this is that we didn't have any professional staff openings except for the one late resignation. That is very unusual. So pleased about that. So this next slide shares a bit about what I call turnover, right? So we have those that are hired and those that are open. And so what is the turnover for this season? 153 permanent employees. So that's a lot. Now, that's not all we hired. This is just during the hiring season. So last year, if you take the whole year, we hired about 231 permanent employees. And then in addition to that, we're hiring about 790 people on stipends or extra comp. So our hiring is a lot. It's significant here in Brookline in any school. So in terms of gender, this next slide, I shared this with you last year, 83.5% female, 15% male, 1.5 did not, just left the field blank when asked. And then in terms of racial identity, 5% Latinx, 6% Asian, 12% Black, 70 white, 1 American Indian, 1 other, which is usually a combination. And then 5% left the survey blank. Okay. So that is some statistics about our hiring season, and I'll turn the mic over to Superintendent Wong.
Thank you, Susan.
You're gonna run. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Susan.
Sorry, can I just ask one question about that slide, about that? Or no?
Susan, there's a question.
Susan, I just wanted to ask if you have also historical data on the turnover. Did you say?
I can get last year's.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, but, and then we don't have anything beyond last year, is that
I don't have any
right?
good data
Okay,
from prior.
that's okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And thank you, Karen, for running my slides. So I'm just gonna hit the highlights of what happened in the summer. So when I arrived, I really wanted to do the entry interviews. And so entry interviews, I open up to a number of people, and I'll talk about who, when, what, why in a second. But every time I've entered a district, I've done them. And so the what, I ask everyone the same 3 questions. What do they think is important for me to know? What they think is most urgent for me to pay attention to. And then the third is also important, maybe not as urgent. And the purpose of the why, the purpose is to help me determine themes or trends that would support how I can be most helpful, particularly in the interim role. And so when I started doing them from the minute I arrived, and I'm still doing them, the bulk of them are complete. So if you're out there thinking you're supposed to have an entry interview and it hasn't happened yet, it's because I'm still doing them. But so far, I have done over 140 entry interviews, which is probably the largest number I ever done, committed, coming into a district. One reason is because I committed to interview everyone on this floor and on floor 4, and so for those of people who are watching, that's all the school staff that are located at Town Hall, serving different operational functions, but also part of OTL and part of OSS. And so that's part of the who I interviewed. When I first arrived, I really wanted to do the senior leadership positions that were available, and then also the principals. And that was because when I arrived, I knew that there was a leadership retreat scheduled at the end of July, and I really wanted to hear from the principals what they thought would be useful in that leadership retreat. And also Karen helped us send out a survey so that we were also to get input that way. Again, it's really, I feel that we're all here trying to be most helpful to the administrative leaders that we are supervising, coaching, mentoring, and to be helpful to them, to be most helpful to the others they may be supervising, and also to the teachers that they're actually supervising. And then the other who is all the members of the school committee, members of many of the town boards, chairs, people who have been identified as important for me to speak, again, for that purpose of what can be most useful. I have interviewed all the curriculum coordinators, all the senior directors, union leadership, and then many leaders in the community that run groups that are helpful to us, like BEF or the Innovation Fund, or other advocacy community groups. Anyone who's wanted time has been given a slot. I also have interviewed town staff leadership, and within the building, but also across the other departments like fire and police and DPW and health and tech. Also water, I don't know, there are a lot of departments. So I've been able to, and everyone's so terrific to make themselves available for me to do that. I thought I'd like to share, this is not an exclusive list of emerging trends or themes, but I wanted to give you insight of what I've heard. A lot of times people told me about their personal history, which was helpful for me, how long they've been here, whether they grew up here, they moved here, whether they had children themselves that went through the district. And so it's the whole range, people who have just gotten here and people who have been here for a long time. And it gives you a flavor of what we are looking at. Our audience represents a whole range of experience and knowledge about the district. So we have to be aware that people aren't all well, this is how we used to do it or how we do it. There are people like, hey, could we do it differently? I don't really understand why you're doing it that way, and be open to that. In terms of what people thought was important for me to know, should be no surprise, some of these themes. Last year's budget cycle, people really wanted to talk about that. They wanted to make sure I understood it, the process of its development and the outcome. And so the process of its development was played out over many meetings, many school committee meetings, and I was impressed by how many people watched those meetings. Really impressed. Residents and staff. I have never been in a situation where so many people are watching those meetings, because they really wanted to understand what was happening. Part of it was out of anxiety that they're watching those meetings, but a lot of people watch those meetings, and so you understand, so that you understand how you present yourselves, how you make decisions, how you process is really important. A lot of people are watching and absorbing that. There was a lot of concern over the numerous changes in senior leadership, particularly the seat that I am occupying at the moment. Since 2018, there have been 6 different superintendents, whether acting interim or permanent, not including the one who is acting for 1 week. But if you include that person, then I am the 8th one over a 7-year period. And so that was a very strong theme that emerged in the entry interviews of what was important for me to understand. So you know, middle level, building base, and senior directors actually have been very consistent. Curriculum coordinators, very consistent. A lot of veteran staff, veteran years represented in that group. So what it's really primarily is at the senior leadership level. And so many people might have thought, oh, it doesn't really matter who's sitting in that seat until they've experienced what they've experienced. But there is a practical impact of so many changes to senior leadership. just the inconsistent expectations, like what one leader, the stylistic wants as an output or outcome or processing. It has an impact, it's had an impact on evaluations, timelines for completion. It's disrupted, it's caused disruption changes for new projects, disruption changes to oversight. I am being mentored by this person, but that person has left. Now I have a new mentor, new supervisor, and what that has meant. There's been insufficient time to build strong teams and establish lines, norms of communication that rely on familiarity and norms. Every time someone new comes into the environment, people are learning how to work with them. When that person says that word, oh, that means this. Whereas another leader might have spoken in a different way, and that's what they meant. When someone said, you know, at your convenience means something different than when someone else says at your convenience. And it's been stressful to adjust to all these different leadership styles. And it's just a practical impact. And the impact to the work that can be done best by teams has been significantly impacted because members of the teams have adjusted and people are renegotiating those kinds of work relationships. Also, I want to note generally, when someone comes new, one is typically orienting into a system with established ways of getting things done. So usually when you're coming new, you're adapting to the structure. And it's on an individual level, I will say, I have found it hard to figure out what the systems are and the structures. And if I'm finding it hard with so many people willing to help me, I can only imagine what it's like for many others entering into the district at this time. So it's not to be taken for granted, the impact, how it transfers through the district. In terms of expectations, the teams, the efficiency, the productivity of the district in getting things done, and also the delay in orientation when someone enters into the district and being able to find their way and making it work. Other concerns expressed about progress on instructional initiatives where, you know, there's a team that's moving forward on an initiative and the members change and there's like this, it often enters into this period of just waiting till someone comes up to speed and picks it up and takes it and continues with it. There is concern about progress toward assuring equitable experiences and outcomes for all students. There has been so much work and groundwork laid to do this for all students, equitable experiences and outcomes for all students. There's concerns about the future. You know, what people wanted me to know, they're concerned about the budget. But on the positive, while people are anxious and they are concerned, there's a lot of pride, especially from those who have lengthy longevity, right? So that's a really positive sign. People who've been here a long, long time have a lot of pride and investment in the district. So that's great. There is frustration and there is weariness. I don't think this should be a surprise to you. But a huge positive is that people don't want things to stay as they are. They want things to be better. They're not acquiescing. They're not accepting, well, this is just the way it's going to be. They want things to get better. The other impressive thing, I've interviewed people in all different roles in the district, all different roles. whether they are support functions, administratively or instructionally, in operations, in the classroom, mentoring or developing curriculum, working with special education, et cetera, they're all hugely self-aware and reflective. I feel it's a highly emotionally intelligent staff, reflective of the community that they are working in. It's a huge positive. So interesting to listen to in these interviews. People are craving guidance on how best to move forward as a collective organization. People are craving a stronger sense of a community working toward achieving collectively shared aspirations. They're looking for guidance, they're looking to do this together. People are looking for leadership. People are looking for leadership at a senior level across departments to work together. They also see the school committee as leaders. So again, they are watching the meetings and they are absorbing the way you are making decisions and processing. But people are looking for leadership and they are also acknowledging the importance of it. And so that's just the feedback on the emerging themes. While doing the entry interviews, which have consumed July, August, and still into September, there's other work that was being done parallel. One was really, when coming in, a big objective of mine was engaging with the leadership teams to get to know them. And so getting to know the principals, the senior leadership team that was here, that just really, really important. Again, arriving knowing that there was going to be a 3-day retreat for the leaders in the end of July. And so that's such a critical time to be able to get to know the team, but also set the plans for moving forward. The other was, there's a lot of concern around, how is the district going to move forward on its equity work? And I want to be clear, this is equity work for all the students, and so I feel a major objective in the summer was to recenter our attention on working together to achieve central strategic objectives and priorities for the benefit of all students. I have not been in a district that had the benefit of our OEE. So for me, coming into the district, I thought we should take what's been done, but of course you're going to continue to focus on equity and do that work. But you can't do it without the leadership team in place. So definitely coming major summer objective was filling the position of Deputy Superintendent of OTL. The other is really appreciating the partnership of Susan and Karen. But we have to I want you to remember, Karen only arrived in the spring. She actually, doing the summer work was new. So everything from spring, she's a first year coming in with a lot of experience, but everything that she's done actually with such grace and put in place is still someone coming in new. So Robin's coming in new, and I hope it's okay to call out, she's never done this role before. And everyone I talked to in her reference check says she was ready. And I think she's ready. And so just the way she's transitioned has been really with a lot of poise and grace, and has been received so well. And I am so glad to have Robin and to be staying through the year. And then I don't know how we could have done it without our anchor. I cannot imagine if we had a fourth new person sitting in the other corner. So we're always like, where's this? Can you redirect us, help us wayfind? But also, and Susan's just entering her 3rd year in this role. So I just can't imagine though, without having that anchor in place. So completing the senior leadership team was a high priority. Robin started just right before we had the leadership team meetings in July. And then the July leadership team meeting was a huge effort to come together, working with new teammates about what we would do. And so it was a 3-day retreat. The first day was really a time to get to know one another. But I feel I'm not really one so much for icebreaker moments, but really like, what can you do substantively that helps you bond? And so I have always opened up the summer leadership retreat with a period of self-reflection on the year that's happened and sort of debriefing that emotionally. And in this case, in this situation, there was actually quite a bit to debrief how emotionally this spring, and to be able to acknowledge that. And we worked with a facilitator who helped do those conversations with us. And actually we had 2 facilitators. And it's just once you get through that, you are already on your way to building that working relationship for a team, because you've come to know each other a bit and somewhat in a vulnerable space, and then we can focus on the work. So what was the work is that coming in as interim, I want to honor the work that has already been done to date. So together with the team, we pulled the strategic plan of the district, and we reevaluated the strategic plan bullet by bullet with the leadership team to get their feedback. Again, 3 of us have been through the summer planning before, so relying on the collective knowledge and understanding of the principal team and some of the senior directors, we evaluated the strategic plan, what they thought was completed, what they thought remained as priorities that we could do in the coming year. I will present that work at the next meeting. Okay, but out of that group, we couldn't have done it without that group. We established the priorities. So our central strategic objectives and the priorities for the benefit of all students. All the priorities at the core is equity for all students. That leadership meeting, we started talking about some of those priorities. And so I think we will talk more about those priorities. They're going to be presented to you at a later time, but definitely the literacy implementation and the MTSS. And I do want to just highlight MTSS Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 supports. Tier 1 is primarily in the general classroom. Tier 2 is also in the general classroom. Tier 3 may also be part of general ed classrooms. It's not just in special education, though special education clearly is Tier 3. The literacy implementation that's happening is Tier 1 across the K-5. MTSS is across all the subjects, but we are doing the literacy implementation, which is Tier 1 training across the entire district, all buildings. And so it reflects the wonderful work that has been done to date by the predecessors. And so this is a really exciting launch, but to understand that how it fits into MTSS, and that there is intention to expand it to the other areas. A lot of work has been done on social emotional learning. So there's other components of MTSS. There's social emotional learning, and there's also the academic learning. But the literacy, this is a really special moment, what's happening in the district. And again, it's building on what has been done before. And I think that feels good for the educators of the district to feel like that is something that was built and is going to happen. And it also, through everything that happened in the spring, the school committee decided to protect that investment. You protected the PD for the literacy implementation. And I just want to underscore for everyone that what the schools represent is about this core learning about students, and it's about equitable outcomes for all of them, and how thoughtful that process was and continues to be. And I hope through these meetings that we're going to be able to highlight the good work that's happening in the district. Whatever is being invested in the schools, I am committed with everyone to show off the investment that has been done in the schools and how we carry forward. So there will be presentations more about so literacy will be presented next week. I'll talk about the strategic plans, SEL, our student behavioral data will be coming in October. There will be a big presentation on student services in its entirety that Karen is going to do in November. So we're going to try to pace these things to sort of also educate everyone in the community about all the things that we're doing tied to our strategic objectives and priorities. And again, the credit goes to everyone that came before us and built it. The August leadership meeting, 70 people. So it's the building leadership, it's the curriculum coordinators, it's Joe Albuquerque facilities, it's everyone that holds a leadership role. And so together in that group, we did some anti-bias training for the evaluators, which is actually required by one of your policies that you put in place October 2024 about promoting equity and hiring retention. And so you actually have it there. So we were able to commit some anti-bias training on that day, and also talked about be able to share the work that came out of the July leadership meeting around identifying the strategic objectives and priorities, and also made it clear the importance of alignment and the importance of fidelity of implementation. So we talked about these are the strategic objectives, how we got there, and then also how they need to be reflected in the school improvement plans, and then in turn reflected in the educator evaluation goals and our principal goals, our leadership goals. Everyone has to pick professional learning goals and student learning goals. And so for everyone to be encouraged to choose goals that will be reflective of the priorities as represented in the SIPs, as defined in the strategic plan. And there is I don't know how I can say how important it is for educators to feel autonomy in their practice. And so it's a balance of educator autonomy in their practice, ensuring that they are teaching things for students to learn that are important, that they're all part of that, but also the importance of moving in a common direction. A single great teacher is not going to close a gap. It's every teacher working together across the grade levels toward that. And so the literacy implementation is just a really great opportunity to start everyone fresh from a common framework. And so, so anyway, it's an exciting thing to do. And can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So initiated during the summer and ongoing. A lot of a common theme in the entry interviews or systems had changed, expectations had changed. So initiated during the summer and ongoing and working with the senior leadership team about how to affect this, we are working on establishing leadership meeting norms. So we talked about it with the principals in July, principals and directors in July, and then we restated it with the August leadership team, how we were structuring. So we are building our leadership meetings on Mondays in the afternoon. So sometimes the leadership team may be meeting with principals. The principals may be meeting on their own. So we're trying to do every other, working around holidays to create that capacity. We have said to the curriculum coordinator group and the senior director groups and other groups, inviting them to pick their common meeting time to be similarly aligned with ours so we can look at scheduling more modular. So if we say we would love to meet with the senior directors or special ed directors, we can pull them as a group, or the curriculum coordinators, can we pull them as a group? So we're trying to align the way we meet and to be able to facilitate collaboration. Yes, vertical alignment, but also encouraging horizontal alignment among the groups. We are working hard to integrate the agendas. I think from what I saw, we had the budget calendar, we had maybe other calendars associated with implementation of something. So we're trying to integrate them to be more efficient for the principals or other leaders so that they're not coming all at different times. So we're trying to integrate what would have been separately scheduled budget meetings into the Monday blocks of time. We are committed to training, supervision, and evaluation. The last formal training was I guess over 5 years ago, approximately. And so we are building in that opportunity to train on supervision and evaluation, and we're building it into the Monday schedule to the extent that we can. We are explicitly communicating expectations for the SIPs. We had our first meeting with the principals last Monday. We'll have another one this Monday. I was happy to meet with BEU leadership this week. So this is part of the meeting norms that we're hoping to establish to keep our lines of communication fluid. But communicating expectations for the SIPs and goal setting. This is initiated during the summer, ongoing, and then developing and planning support action plans to achieve our strategic objectives, which you're going to hear more and more of in the meetings to come. And then initiated during the summer and ongoing is preparing for a possible override. I know that people have definitely shared their ideas of how we should be preparing for a possible override. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to share my perspective on how to prepare for a possible override. And so I say that to the members of the school committee, and we can continue to have conversations about that. But I just wanted to make sure that my voice was heard on this. I feel that when you're preparing for a possible override, you have to understand the financial context, what came before, what we're dealing with now, and what we anticipate for the future. Preparing for a possible override, you need to understand the budget drivers, the salaries and expenses. Sometimes it can be the tuitions, but it's just what are, and every year, sometimes it can be different. It can be a different thing. But what are the budget drivers, salaries and expenses, before, current, and future? We're being asked to project the future, and I'm saying we can do that better when we make sure that we are understanding before and current. Understanding the town-wide context. We're just a piece of the pie, right? We're just a piece of the pie. So there are, no department ever has everything that they need. And all the departments, we cannot not do without a department. I don't know if I did that right. We need our fire, we need our police, we need our DPW, we need all the departments, and everybody needs to have what they need. And it's clear, no one has everything that they need. And so it's a balance. So you can't do it without understanding the town-wide context. I know that people want us to be fiscally efficient, and we will do that. We will be fiscally efficient. At the same time, we are the ones that have to tell you what is needed to educate the students in the town. And from all the meetings I've listened to, at the heart of it is we are looking through a lens of equity for all students, no matter where they come from, where they are. So in preparing for a possible override, you have to understand the breadth and depth of the educational program before, current, and future. I can't just create a budget based on what there is. I don't know if there should be something different or something less. So you have to give us a chance to understand the breadth and depth of the educational program before, current, and future. It's a huge budget. There are a lot of programs. And then doing that, yes, you have to do this every year. Identifying efficiencies across all departments. We will do that work. Sometimes you do things the same way forever and ever, and maybe there's a different way to do it. Maybe technology has allowed for efficiencies, so we have to identify the efficiencies. That can't happen without really reflection and trust in being able to do that. We need to identify areas for further development. We all know that we are implementing the literacy program K-5. We are piloting in 6-8. It's just understood, I think, that if you're going to maximize your investment and what you're doing, that we will be looking at 6-8, and we may be looking at other curriculum areas. There might be areas for new development. I don't know for sure, but there have been studies done. We have studies done about disparities in our district, disparities in experience, disparity in outcomes. And so we are obligated to come up with strategies for how to work with that. And that may be more of the same, committing to what we already have in place, but it may be about identifying areas for new development. And we are asking for, honestly, at least a couple of months. We could do a back of an envelope projection, but it'll be just a back of the envelope projection. I feel to do this right, we have to do this sort of really more in-depth analysis of what we have, the before, the current, and the future. That's my last slide. Yeah. Okay, so that is the summer updates where, and I am so grateful to this team. I feel like one of the highlights is coming to work with this group. And I have really enjoyed getting to know the principals and also the curriculum coordinators, senior directors, everyone. And I'm anxious to get in schools more to observe what's happening in the classroom. So again, what's most important in the district is what's happening between teacher and student. And our role as administrators is to support what's happening in the classroom. And those of us that are supervising people, it's all about what we can do to support what's happening in the classroom. So the instructional core it should be the focus of all initiatives around equity. And so that's what I believe the literacy initiative is doing. I think also the work around MTS, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, interventions and support, systems of interventions and support. How many students do you know that don't have a disability, don't qualify for an IEP, but need that support? And so the investment in this is, it's about all students. And there is likely further development that if we want to continue on this path. But I thank our teams, and I thank you.
Superintendent Wong, I want to thank you. It's hard to believe that you've only been here for a little over 2 months. This is amazing work. I've had the pleasure of seeing you perhaps more than most over the summer. And you have been so gracious, so generous with your time, with school committee, with your staff, staff, in preparing to start the school year and really getting to know the community. And those interviews that you did speak volumes to your commitment to this community, your thoughtfulness with which you were approaching this job, and really look forward to working with you over this school year. Thank you so much for this presentation.
You are welcome, and it's my pleasure. I have enjoyed all the interactions I've had.
Bella, bella, bella. Come bella questo giorno. No, I'm not going to sing. I just texted my wife, Bella. I just listened to you for a long time. Usually, you phase in, you phase out when you're listening to people, but I didn't phase out. You captured my attention for 45 minutes or whatever it was. So I texted my wife, I said, Bella is brilliant. And I just want to say a few things. First thing, you emphasize that equity is about all of our children. You said it over and over. That's a truth. Equity, educational equity is about all of our children. Thank you. You also demonstrated just an incredible understanding of this place, with its strengths, its history, its weaknesses, its goals, its challenges, its aspirations. And you demonstrated an incredible listening ability. You've met with hundreds of people. You've done these huge leadership meetings, 70 people, smaller number of people. And your collaborative work in a very, very short amount of time in a new system just blows me away. And again, I look forward to listening to you all year and just celebrating what I'm celebrating right now, which I think is your brilliance and your softness and your humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Carolyn?
Thanks, Sarah and Val. I have a feeling this might be around the table. Yeah, I was mesmerized by listening to you, and I hope what you said was true, that lots of people watch our meetings. I hope many people are watching this meeting so they can share in the excitement that at least I feel, and I'm guessing that others do, with your arrival and the arrival and collaboration and continuing support of our intrepid Susan Givens, Dr. Givens, and these two other women who are rounding out your team. And as I was listening to you, it was almost like I felt my role as a school committee member sort of transform or start to make sense, because I suddenly, I felt like, wow, I have so much confidence in these people, not that we didn't have wonderful people before, but you are articulating and elevating and bringing forth for us vision and work. And then I just thought, wow, I can kind of sit back and watch this and hopefully support this. So welcome again and thank you.
Val, no more hands.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for all the information on opening of school, to you and the entire team, to all the building leaders, to all the educators, paraprofessionals, support staff. Thank you for getting us started in the 25 to 26 school year. And with my apologies to Julie Jetty, we have one person up for public comment. And Julie, when you're able to switch over, we will start your 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Val. Thank you, everyone. And also welcome to Superintendent Wong and the new administrators in the district. My name is Julie Jetty. I am the parent of a Baker 8th grader and a BHS junior, and I'm a town meeting member in precinct 16. And I also happen to be on the Shared Mobility Advisory Committee. Although I'm not speaking on behalf of SMAC, we do have the committee with the best acronym in town. And I only mention that to say that I'm really interested in transportation issues and really interested in helping people find ways to get out of cars and onto other forms of transportation, which is not easy to do from here in South Brookline. So I want to thank the transportation department. I know there's been a lot of work done on the issues that we've had out here with buses, but I have to say that I don't think they're solved yet. And I think that there's still a problem with communicating with the right families. I know that an email, and I appreciated, by the way, Dr. Gibbons's explanation of not reaching students in buffer zones, because that explains why nobody in my immediate neighborhood got the spring registration email. But there was an email I know that went out on Friday that I did receive. A lot of my neighbors still did not. There were people kind of across my precinct whose students had graduated who did receive it. So I'm very worried that we don't really still know the scope of the problem and the need for transportation. I can also say that, excuse me, a lot of parents I'm hearing from who've been assigned to the Z Block bus are driving their students because they simply can't get that, they can't tolerate their students getting to school a whole hour before their class is open. My student happens to be in Z Block, so that's great for him, but these families are really struggling to get their kids to school. And it's, from the shared mobility perspective, I will just say that it doesn't help anybody to have extra cars on the road trying to get to BHS when students are trying to get to Lincoln, Old Lincoln, BHS, and the other all the other schools in the area. I know that Dr. Gibbons said that nothing had changed with the schedules, and that just hasn't been the experience that my neighbors have had. There was the middle bus, I guess, the bus that now gets to BHS at 7:35, used to pick up near our house at 7:40, and it's now picking up like between 7:15 and 7:20. That's also really early. That also really, just doesn't work for a lot of students. So, and I have one family, and I think there are several families whose students are getting to school an hour before their classes start, and because they've been assigned to the 4 o'clock bus, are at school an hour after school ends. And I just I don't see how it could really be acceptable for a kid to have to spend 2 hours at school doing nothing. I think it's probably a bad idea for the high school also. So that's a concern. So, I would also say that it's a particular problem for students, who are in some of our, special, or partially separate, I guess substantially separate programs. I spoke to the parent of a RISE student who said that, her student's getting to school very early and sitting in front of the classroom that's not open yet and presumably watching TV on her phone, which is just, not great. So I really hope that I think there was a communications problem that turned into a sampling problem or a registration problem. But I do think that we also need to think about what these times and stops really look like, because it's really inequitable for a lot of families out here. So I would also like to offer my help. I know that the district wants to solve this problem, and I know that other parents here would like to be helpful also. So thank you, and thank you, Val, for letting me go over my time a little bit. Appreciate it.
Apologies for the delay, Julie.
No worries.
Thank you. Okay, next we are moving on to our FY26 budget update and FY27 budget outlook. Susan?
Yeah, we're not doing that item.
We're not doing that item. Okay. This is why we have the sub-I. Next on the agenda then is the FY27 budget development calendar, first reading and possible vote. Mariah, is this you or Susan or both?
You know, actually, we were going to do 5B. So I'll just take over for that. Val,
I
if
don't
that's
know
okay
what's
with
going
you.
on because I thought we were going to have the chance to talk about some
Yeah.
of the budget.
So Mariah, I'll take over here and then I'll pass it to you next, or have Val pass it to you next. So, so this part of what we were hoping to do was have a conversation that the school committee can partake in on expenditures and revenues, because the study committee has done some work, and we wanted to, Jesse and I wanted to report to you, update you about it. So I have a bunch of slides here, and I made sure to get that into the meeting materials ahead. You also have a printout of it. So I'm going to let you, Betsy, just advance as I speak, because everybody already has this set of slides. And it's really just meant to make sure that everybody knows the work that's been done already, to lead us into a conversation about a possible override. So just to let you know, we have a committee that we have formed. We have 9 members of that committee. And on the committee, I sit as the voting member, and Jesse is the alternate. And we have, members from the AC, from the advisory committee, and from the select board, and then members of the public. And the idea was to bring together people that represent different interests around town. This committee will hopefully recommend an operating tax override, or we're going to determine if we're going to recommend an operating tax override to Proposition 2.5, to alleviate what we expect to be significant operating deficits for both the town and the schools, at least in fiscal year 27 and beyond. And you can read our charge. I made sure that it's linked here in the slides that people at home too can access with the meeting materials. And one of the things that our charge from the select board includes instructions to also identify, consider, and evaluate possible revenue sources and operating efficiencies. So it's about the whole thing. We have had override study committees in the past, and we rely on that information, the information that we get both from both the town and the schools, to allow the study committee to conduct our own analysis. And here I have up on the, so I guess next slide, I have a bunch of the different presentations that we have, that have been presented to us, and I made sure to link some of them so that you can read them as well. Next slide. So some of the presentations were town departmental reviews. And what we were doing is we're getting from them the key areas of focus, basically their need to haves, their vital services that are not being met, their cost control measures, revenue opportunities, opportunities for collaborations with the schools, comparison to peer communities, public requests for new services, and service gaps. So that's just like, that's one type of presentation we had. And so we went through, as Bella was saying before, fire, water, all the different departments. So what will we be recommending? Our past override study committees have recommended the amount of an override, the allocation of the money between the town and the schools, the time frame at which you will have the increases to levy, and we're also going to recommend revenue opportunities and opportunities for operational efficiencies and expense reductions. So you know that we are in the third year of that last override. It happened in May 2023. Our overrides tend to be for 3 years, and we have the final portion that is being levied in 2026 of that last override. So I wanted to talk about time frame just so that people realize we will serve ourselves best if we have this override, if we propose an override by January, so that we can get out into the public and talk about it so that people are well informed before they vote. And the charge that I have seen our committee wants to ask the schools is that we would be able to tell the voters how additional levy funds would be used. And we want people on the committee would also like that we can show the community the possible impact of our recommendations, as well as the advisory committee would really like to have to be able to measure and monitor the success of any new initiatives and investments that are made. The work to be done is also to show the town what a level service budget forecast would look like for the schools. And the committee has also asked that we show the impact to the town and public schools of Brookline if we either didn't decide to put forward an override or the override was not adopted. And so this is my last slide, and I just wanted to say that the continuing conversations that have been happening with the committee have been around a set of questions that they've asked the schools. I think we've referred to that before here. And those questions really center around special education, the use of space in our school buildings, how to optimize them, and the impact of enrollment on budget. As the answers to these questions are provided by the schools, we will integrate the information into our overall plan, as the schools are an integral component of the overall solution. So I hoped that kind of quickly I brought you up to speed of where the thinking is of the committee. Of course, just like any town committee that happens, you can watch the videos of it, you can read the minutes of it, you can read the different documents that have been presented. And this was try to kind of get your attention and get you thinking about that. So I wanted to make sure that the bulk of what we're doing here is a conversation where school committee members get to express themselves on this topic.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions or comments?
Donna?
I actually just had a clarifying question about what you just had hoped the discussion would be. Are there specific topics or questions that you have for us that you were hoping we would discuss, or is it related to the questions that were
I think
asked?
I kind of wanted to get your attention that this was going on and make sure that it's something on your mind. Jesse can help me out here of what we hoped to do, but just to make sure that we bring it to the school committee, that this is something that Jesse and I want to represent the whole of the school committee when we're on that study committee. And so just to make sure that we've had conversations.
Mariah?
I just want to add that at last night's finance committee, we started to discuss the budget guidelines for this year as well, and how they're going to intersect with in part how they're going to intersect with the override planning and discussion, so that we can start to think about what are the things that we think is important. We asked Bella had to leave, she had a conflict, but we asked the 3 deputies who were able to stay and participate in the conversation, to get a list of really like the very short list of where we should be focusing as we're thinking about this, really understanding that, as Bella mentioned earlier, and I think she said she'll present at the next meeting, the heart of the work is in the strategic plan, and there's a lot of work ongoing. And I think she said she'll be providing an update for us on where things are at in the next meeting, and what's really still going. So we want to look at those things. We had this conversation really about like not losing focus on the sort of key underpinnings of a successful district. Like we talked about middle school time as one example of that, and making sure that we had equitable middle school time. And so we want to make sure that we have a strong foundational functioning school system, and what we need to do to make sure that happens. We also talked about the fact that we have been in we've had to make significant reductions to our program over the past couple of years. And so this idea of restoring in a restoration level budget, sort of the level service budget that Sarah just mentioned that they're asking for, but also what a restoration budget look like, and then a program improvement budget. So I just wanted to let people know who weren't there at finance as well, that there was this other conversation which dovetails really closely and importantly with the work that's going to be coming and needs to happen for this expenditures and revenues committee.
I watched the recording at 3 this morning, Mariah, and I thought the restoration conversation was really important, because I do think that there has been a chipping away over the last 5-6 years of various programs, and I'm not sure that people are aware that some of them are gone, or what form they're in now. So I appreciated that discussion that you all had.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add to that too, that Bella yesterday was, we had a conversation more or less about the timing, which Bella has talked about earlier in her presentation, again, ties to this, that, and I expressed my concern that if we present a level service budget early on, it becomes sort of this default assumption that that's okay, when we really have chipped away at many key things, that we don't want the level service budget to become the talking point and everything else is like a plus, because really as we all have understood, that there's very significant cuts that have happened that are impacting operations this year. So, yeah, so I just wanted to make sure people had the context of yesterday's conversation as well. And if they want to watch the video, that's great too. And in our updates on our liaison reports, I'll add a little bit more into that later on.
Thank you.
Andy?
Yes, so in your last slide, Sarah, you sort of highlighted these 3 areas where you said the committee wants more information from the schools, like special education, use of space in school buildings, and enrollment. I mean, these are all important things to know about, but is there a recognition that the impact of these things on our budget is sort of dwarfed by the biggest budget driver, which is the year-on-year growth in the salary budget based on steps, lanes, and COLA? Right? That's the really big thing that we somehow need to address, and we have to address it this year in the context of negotiations, alongside possibly preparing for an override. So does the committee understand that? Like these are all important areas, but
I guess you're not asking, do I understand that? Because that's what I always lead with whenever I talk about our budget. But so Jesse said they do. I think that if you look at the 6 pages of questions that the committee has asked the superintendent to answer, that what you're referring to is one of the 5 topics. So it is there.
Yes, sir. So I just wanted to add that one of the things that we might get from Chaz Carey in the town next week is an update on what town services and features and staff reductions will be on the agenda if an override isn't passed. And I think, in all fairness, speaking from the school committee side, we should anticipate the same thing, that if an override doesn't go, that it would be either a level service budget or less, because the money has to come from somewhere. We're already, it was discussed today at the RSC meeting, the town is over $3 million short already, and we're $2 million short at least because of the circuit breaker thing. And so we do need to pay attention very carefully to the, to putting together an explanation to the public about why we're going to need more money and exactly what we're going to do with it, so that we can begin to persuade and bring people to understand why this is so important. Yeah, there are many more details in the PSB questions, which I believe all of us on school committee got a copy of. If not, I know that Bella and her team got.
And it is linked here in this last slide.
Yes, and we have it linked. So there's an extensive set of questions that try to enable our ERSC committee to understand exactly what it takes to run the schools and where some opportunities might be for revenue. We don't see large ones, but there are some. And then what to do about expenses in a situation in which there isn't more money after next year. And so we're trying to look at it from both sides. The town has been able to do some projections for on their side. And in order for our committee to move with some speed to get recommendations by December, so that the select board has it early in the first quarter, so that it can end up, if it's going to happen, on the ballot, we don't really have a lot of time at this point. Personally, I guess I'm a little frustrated, even in the sense that we have our ERSC committee is where it is right now, discussing rather than building up the recommendations. We have done some work on town school partnerships in different, how that model works in other municipalities that are similar to Brookline's. And we continue to do that work in a subcommittee I'm on in that ERSC. But overall, time is marching on, and we do have to get ourselves to a point where we understand what the limits are to how much we'll be able to spend, and be ready, if it happened, to understand what changes might have to be made, if, again, on the town side and on the school side.
Bob?
Thank you, Sarah. Bella, during the interview processes that you were part of, obviously, I think my translation of some of what you said about budget is that one of the things you might like to do is a zero-based budget. In other words, you said you want to blow up the budget. I mean, those are my words. And start all over to some extent and sort of take a fresh look, because the alternative is sort of assuming that what's there is there and okay. So listen, you've got a few things on your plate. How are you thinking about that now?
I don't know if we have time to rebuild from a zero-based budget, but I think there are areas, and it will be extra work on Susan's part, that we can ask questions about doing things differently. And we're doing some assessments now to figure out if there's some things that we can reorganize. I'm sorry, I did have a thought to share. Hopefully this will kind of answer your question too. There have been a lot of questions around special education, particularly around tuitions, and I just think there's just misconceptions out there, which is why I asked Karen to do the presentation in November, to do a really comprehensive presentation to educate the community, because this is a wonderful forum to do that. I also want to say that we do our best to serve students within district, and families would prefer to have students to be served in district. And there are times where we're not able to serve a student in district. And just to appreciate that those are those, that's a difficult decision. And I, I just want people to understand that families would, families would typically prefer that their child is able to stay in general ed in schools and that in their community. And to think about it with some sensitivity when they're asking questions and I don't know, the innuendo one might cast on that process. And so I hope in the presentation we'll go through how referral works, how IEPs may or may not be developed, assessments, the annual revisiting of the IEP, and sometimes students will go out of district, and the considerations that are part of that process, maybe to demystify it, but also just have people understand that those are often emotional decisions.
I understand why you're speaking about that, because I think I've been guilty of that myself, is looking at that number and placing maybe too much importance on that. You might have heard me say it sometimes. And I just recently did a deep dive into looking at percentage of students who are in out-of-district placements of overall students that are on IEPs for us. And we tend to be low in our town. When you compare to comparable communities, when you compare to the comparable communities of other town, like our school comparable communities and our town comparable communities. And so you're right that a little bit of education is a really good idea around that, because that has helped me understand better.
It's, yeah, more than an aggregate number, what that represents. So yes, looking for efficiencies, but also maybe helping people to answer the questions, you know,
I mean,
and put some transparency on the processing and the decision making.
I think I'm not exaggerating if I say that over the past few years, there's been a loss of trust and respect for the schools. There has been some, and I think this is already a highly taxed community. It's also a community that has wealth here and there. But I think I'm sure everybody knows this, that we have to rebuild trust. We have to establish trust in the school system and elsewhere. And the way you do that is by demonstrating competence. And I think that just at this meeting here, as I've been impressed with Bella's presentation and also Robin's and Susan's, that's the way you build trust. And I also want to say that I think that it's essential to have an override. There's a structural deficit in Massachusetts. We all know that. And I'm hoping that because we've suffered financially over the past few years, that we can have a robust override, and that will pass because people will trust us.
One of the things I've heard again and again is communication is really important. And I know that eventually for a proposed override, if we end up proposing an override, we will probably go out into PTOs and have conversations. Do you think that it would be too early now for our communication team to start out those conversations, even if we don't quite know what's going to be proposed?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, over my years when I was working for the system, I participated in a few overrides, the high school renovation, other overrides mainly for buildings. And the key, I mean, Jim Walsh, the guy up here on the wall, he and I did a road show with other people to do the first high school renovation. And your question is, when do we communicate to the community, to PTOs, to the community at large? I think when we have our act together in terms of what we're asking and demonstrating the need, I think then the most important thing you do is get out into the community, talk to folks, and demonstrate the absolute need for increasing their taxes to support the schools here. I just read somewhere that Brookline was just identified as the #1 community to live in the United States. Did anybody see that anywhere? Maybe it was on Facebook, I don't know. Maybe it's AI, I don't know. But, you know, everybody says schools, schools, schools in Brookline, Brookline, Brookline. And we have a big responsibility to maintain that and to support that. Yeah. So I'm certainly excited about going out into the community and talking about what we need in a compelling way. And Brookline Day is coming up this Sunday, and I'm going to be out there for a few hours. I don't know if we'll talk about override, but I just want to schmooze with the community and communicate how much we all care about this place and our schools. Yeah.
Thanks,
I
Bob.
feel like,
Everyone
I
else?
feel like I got your attention, and I feel like I've addressed the hands around the room. So Val, oh, sorry, and Donna?
I think maybe I'm like slower than the rest of you on the uptake, but are we going to have continued discussion so that like, how does the information that's going to the expenditures and revenue committee, when you need to answer questions about what the school needs or some of the, you know, the list of questions that they have there, are those discussions that are happening at this table and then you're taking that information back to them, or like what's the sequencing?
Yeah, so just to be clear, Donna, Bella, I mean, we didn't have a superintendent going to these meetings for a while, right? So let's take that into consideration. Bella is now attending these meetings, Susan is attending these meetings, and Karen is when the need arises. So we do also have a staff presence so that we don't always need to have it filtered through Sarah or Jesse to have it a straight presentation from our staff. But as we heard over the last couple hours, these teams are just building up, right? They've done tremendous work of building that capacity in those teams over these last 8 weeks, and are really now looking toward closing FY25, so that we can be able to do those projections for that E&R committee and start answering the questions that they're able to answer with some fidelity. Bella, correct me if I'm speaking out of turn.
No, that's right. We're just waiting for those, for that to close out, and then we can answer the questions. I think they understand that we're answering questions based on FY25. Yeah.
Okay, and so Val, I think we've finished up here.
Great. Moving on to our school committee action, FY27 budget development calendar, first reading and possible vote. Mariah?
Thank you. So yesterday at the finance meeting, the finance subcommittee unanimously voted to recommend the dates that are partially on the screen in front of you. I think, there we go. And with the understanding that, you know, just as in last year, these dates are not necessarily fixed, but they are aspirational. However, given, of course, the timeline of a potential override, we would need to have a budget relatively set. I think Susan said that really March would be the right window. We wouldn't want to creep into April as we did this past year. So again, the school committee or the finance subcommittee recommended, voted these dates. And I guess I would make a motion for a full school committee to approve them.
I'll
Second.
second that. Or Jesse seconds that. Sarah, can you take the roll in the room, please?
Bob, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Val?
Yes,
Mariah?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
thank you. We are moving on to our subcommittee and liaison reports. And before we begin, I just want to state that for a pilot for this school year, we're combining our finance and capital subcommittees to try that out and see how that works. If it seems successful at the end of the year, in June, we would vote then to make that change in the policy manual. So just so everybody's aware, it's a pilot year to see how it goes, and if it's deemed successful, we would move that to a policy change. So subcommittee reports curriculum. Suzanne, anything?
So our first meeting is going to be in October. We're meeting October 20th and October 23rd. The agenda is going to be presentations of the school improvement plans. So we'll have 5 schools on one day, and we'll have 5 schools, that includes BEEP, on the second day. So everybody's welcome. It's always interesting to hear the plans and see what their priorities are at the school level. And I think that's it for now.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a technical question? Are we gonna jointly notice those with finance, or are we gonna, like last year, are we gonna leave them as straight curriculum, but anyone can join?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We can think about that, but
It's okay
I
with
think
me if we leave them straight curriculum, but then we wouldn't be able to ask any questions. That's my only concern.
right, except we may have an open session for everybody, right, Betsy? Is that- Double post it, yeah, we could do that.
That might be easier.
That might be easier. Okay, we'll figure that out.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Bob?
Suzanne? So it looks like those excuse me, looks like those first 2 meetings are pretty full. Do we have the authority to request reports from different leaders in the system about curriculum stuff? Do we have, in other words, can we request that the Social Studies Department at Brookline High School present on WISP? Can we do that?
Well, when you come to curriculum meeting, we can set the agendas for the upcoming meetings. I mean, curriculum, yeah.
So we can do that?
Yes, we do,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Sarah, DEIJ.
No update?
Okay. Mariah, finance.
So I gave quite a bit of an update earlier, and we voted the calendar. So that's most of what we did yesterday. We're going to meet again next week. And part of what we're going to cover next week, a big important thing is, if all goes well, we're going to be reviewing the CIP to vote, because it needs to go to the town the week after that. So that's a little bit of a preview.
And accounts payable warrants, is that?
So actually, I have a thought about this, which is, I was thinking, because what happens is we get to the end of the night and I never want to talk about this. And what I thought would make sense, because we run out of time and it's late, is if I started sending these to Betsy and we just included the scan in the consent agenda, and that way people could see it week to week. Does that make sense?
The entire warrant?
No, it's just one page. It's a one-page
Okay.
document. Sometimes
Right.
it's 2 pages. It'll give you the dollar amount. That way you would see it like week to week. And if there was anything exciting, Jesse or I could actually maybe just like write a note on it. And that way would be, people would see it like right then and there.
I think as long as there's no student identifying information or.
There's nothing on it. It's just batch numbers and dollar amounts. There's nothing identifying about anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Carolyn? Carolyn, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, sorry, I have a quick question, and I was trying to check this in Google. So at finance, you guys reviewed and I think voted grants. Was that part of our consent agenda tonight?
No.
Okay. So we'll vote those at a later meeting?
Next week.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, is that a hand? No, okay, sorry. Continue, Val?
Government relations, I think there's no update right now.
Oh, just,
Negotiations. I'm sorry.
Actually,
Sorry.
well,
There
two
is an
things.
update. Yay, Suzanne.
Actually, Betsy gave me a whole page of notes, but we'll try to, of reminders. Our meeting is going to be October 8th, but what we need to know is the MASC annual meeting is scheduled for November 12th to the 14th. It's down at Hyannis. And we typically go. However, we eliminated from the budget the money for that conference. So if somebody wants to go, I guess they would have to pay for it, but we should let Betsy know as soon as possible. I mean, you could pick a day, maybe you go down and come back for the day, I don't know. It's kind of a long haul.
I had told you that I was interested, and then I had a quick conversation with Bob walking in today, and I'm straightened out that I'm not going to go.
You're not going to go.
You said it's the 8th?
It's the 12th to the 14th.
That I know, but I'm saying the one before that,
Oh, October 8th is our government relations meeting,
the subcommittee.
subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason we need to know is if you are to be the school committee's delegate, the school committee needs to vote to designate you as such.
To vote for them.
And then the school committee would also take
Betsy, I'm not sure you're being picked up in the room.
a position on.
I think you're not turned on.
So Betsy is just saying off mic, go ahead.
Just to say, the reason we need to know is that if we have someone who's going to be the school committee's representative there, the school committee needs to vote that person as a delegate, and also that the school committee would then take positions on the MASC resolutions, and we need to schedule that, so.
It's too bad, but I think that when we eliminated the money for that, we took the decision that we're not going.
So it's about, what is it, about $500 for the conference? 400, 500. Yeah, we've been getting the information in the mail. Has everybody gotten it? I mean, you're getting the MAS, okay. So if you knew somebody who lives down there, maybe you could crash with them. Think about it and let us know. Thank you.
So negotiations is going to be chaired by Andy with Suzanne as the second member. There's still a vacancy if anybody wants to join. Andy, do you want to do negotiations and policy?
Sure. There are no updates on negotiations, but policy did meet this past Monday for the first time this school year. We talked about pending policies. So these are ones that were discussed by policy last year, but where we didn't end up passing anything through school committee, as well as a couple of things that we are going to be taking up this year that were not discussed last year. So really briefly, at our next meeting in October, we'll be talking about a class size and sectioning policy. So this is, I guess, enrollment and class assignment. Updates to the flag protocol and Pledge of Allegiance that Mariah brought up, as well as the building use and access policy. That one went very far last year. I think all that was left was to combine it with an existing section, so that will come up in October as well. Earlier, Carolyn, you asked about competency determination. So where this intersects with school committee is that DESE is requiring school committees to pass policies around competency determination and graduation requirements by December 31st of this year. This is in the wake of the MCAS getting abolished as a graduation requirement. So right now, staff are working on competency determination, and I think, Suzanne, you and I should just figure out how that needs to go through curriculum and or policy. So basically, it needs to come to the school committee for 2 readings, with enough time for us to pass something by the end of December.
End of December?
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the moment,
knows
staff are working on it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's teed up for October. November, we know we'll be discussing the student civil rights policy and instructional materials policy, where we're looking maybe just to incorporate some MASC language into the PSB policy. So the two kind of big things that we did not work on last year, but we're going to be taking up this year. One is there's the whole section D of the policy manual on fiscal management. So a lot of work was done on this several years ago, back when Sam Rippon was our ANF deputy superintendent. And when he left, that kind of came to a halt. But I think this year we really should bring that over the finish line. So that's going to be something ongoing through the year, and that's an entire section of the policy manual. And the other thing that we need to work on this year in policy is the issue of school resource officers. So the school committee chair has said that she would like our discussion of that issue to originate in policy. So I think there would be at least 2 meetings that would be largely devoted to basically public hearings on that topic. So we haven't scheduled that yet, but we know that's coming. So that was basically our policy meeting. We were setting an agenda for as much of the year as we can currently foresee.
Any other liaison updates, subcommittee updates? Hearing none, any new business?
Carolyn?
This is just a little, the bringing up mask, MASC reminded me of something that's on my calendar for tomorrow that other people might be interested in. Mask is having a webinar, Equity 101, tomorrow at noon. I'm looking at the link just on mask.org under calendar of events on the homepage. So that might be something of interest for school committee members and others.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second?
Yes?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We stand adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Betsy.